They say silence is golden, but sometimes silence is the sound of your life falling apart. Jaden Sterling, the city's most arrogant real estate tycoon, thought the buzzing of his phone was just an annoyance. He thought his pregnant wife, Elena, was just being clingy. So, with his mistress laughing in his ear, he did the unthinkable. He pressed block. He didn't know that while he was raising a glass of champagne, his wife was fighting for her life on their kitchen floor. He didn't know that blocking that one specific call would cost him his fortune, his legacy, and his soul. Watch until the end, because the karma that hits him isn't just brutal. It's permanent. The interior of L'Obsidian, Manhattan's most exclusive rooftop lounge, smelled of crushed velvet, imported cigars, and money that was too old to be polite. It was the kind of place where a bottle of water cost more than a mortgage payment in the Midwest, and tonight it was the kingdom of Jaden Sterling. Jaden, 34 and wearing a bespoke navy suit cut by a tailor on Savile Row, leaned back in the leather booth. He swirled a glass of amber whiskey, the ice clinking softly against the crystal. To his right sat Sasha Vane. Sasha was everything Jaden's wife was not. Where Eleanor was soft, quiet, and visibly exhausted from carrying Jaden's heir for 8 months, Sasha was sharp angles, loud laughter, and dressed in a red silk dress that clung to her like a second skin. She was a model-turned-influencer who loved Jaden's credit card limit far more than she loved Jaden. "You look tense, darling," Sasha purred, running a manicured nail down the lapel of his jacket. "Is it the merger?" "No," Jaden sighed, glancing at his phone, which was vibrating violently on the marble table. "It's Elena. Again." Sasha rolled her eyes, a dramatic gesture she had perfected for her Instagram stories. "God, is she still calling? That's the 5th time in 10 minutes. Doesn't she know you're in a meeting?" "I told her I was meeting with the investors from Dubai," Jaden lied smoothly. The only investment happening tonight was the diamond bracelet currently sitting in a velvet box in his pocket, waiting for Sasha's wrist. The phone lit up again. The name, Elena. Wife flashed on the screen. Jaden groaned. "She's probably panicking about the nursery paint color again. Or she wants me to feel the baby kick. It's relentless, Sasha. I can't breathe in that house anymore. It smells like baby powder and desperation." "So don't breathe there," Sasha whispered, leaning close, her perfume, heavy with jasmine and ambition, clouding his senses. "Stay here, with me. But you can't relax if that thing keeps buzzing." She gestured to the phone. Jaden picked it up. He stared at the screen. For a split second, a flicker of guilt pricked him. Eleanor was 34 weeks pregnant. The doctor, Dr. Alastair Vance, a renowned specialist at Mount Sinai, had warned them last week that her blood pressure was creeping up. "She needs calm, Jaden," the doctor had said. But the alcohol was warm in his blood, and Sasha's hand was resting on his thigh. "Answer it," Sasha teased cruelly. "Go on, be a good little husband, and go home to wifey." Jaden's ego bristled. "I do what I want, Sasha." "Prove it," she challenged, her lips curling into a smirk. "Make it stop." The phone started ringing again, a 6th time. Jaden looked at Sasha, then at the phone. The vibration made a jagged noise against the marble. It was irritating. It was an intrusion on his fantasy life. "She's suffocating me," Jaden muttered. "Then cut the cord," Sasha laughed. "Block her, just for tonight. Tell her tomorrow your battery died. She's so pathetic she'll believe you anyway." The idea was seductive. Total silence. No nagging, no guilt, just the music, the whiskey, and Sasha. Jaden's thumb hovered over the screen. He tapped the info icon. He scrolled down. Block this caller. He hesitated for a fraction of a second. Do it, Sasha whispered. Jayden tapped block. The phone went silent. The screen went dark. There, Jayden exhaled, a sudden rush of adrenaline and freedom washing over him. Done! Sasha threw her head back and laughed, a sound that was bright and sharp like breaking glass. Oh, you are bad, Jayden. I love it. Now, order another bottle of the Dom Perignon. We have to celebrate your liberation. Jayden signaled the waiter, a smug smile playing on his lips. He felt powerful. He felt in control. He had no idea that 20 miles away, in their sprawling estate in Greenwich, the silence he had just enforced was about to become the loudest sound in the world. Elena Sterling dropped the phone. It hit the expensive hardwood floor of the master bedroom with a dull thud, but she didn't have the strength to pick it up. She was on her knees, clutching the edge of the silk bedspread, her knuckles white. The pain wasn't just a contraction. This wasn't what the books described. This was a tearing, searing agony that felt like a hot knife was being twisted inside her abdomen. Jayden! She gasped, the name coming out as a ragged wheeze. She had called him 6 times. The first 5 rang through to voicemail. The 6th one hadn't even rung. It had gone straight to a disconnect tone. He blocked me. The realization hit her harder than the physical pain. Her husband, the father of the child fighting inside her, had blocked her number. Elena tried to stand, but her legs gave way. She collapsed onto the rug, knocking over a nightstand lamp. The bulb shattered. She wasn't just calling him because she was in pain. She was calling him because of what she had found. An hour ago, while looking for the insurance documents Dr. Vance had requested for the hospital pre-registration, Elena had opened Jayden's private safe in the study. She knew the combination. It was the date of their first date, a date he had probably forgotten, but she never would. Inside, she hadn't found the insurance cards. She had found a dossier, a set of emails printed out, wire transfers. They were transfers from the Sterling Group's holding accounts into a shell company in the Cayman Islands, a shell company registered to Sasha Vane. Jayden wasn't just cheating on her. He was draining the company accounts. He was embezzling millions from his own board of directors to fund a life with his mistress. But the documents showed something else, something terrifying. The transfers had triggered a red flag with the SEC. There was a subpoena buried in the stack, dated for tomorrow morning. If Jayden didn't return the money or explain it by morning, he would be arrested. The FBI was already circling. Elena had called to save him. She had called to tell him to come home, to fix it, to tell him she would help him hire a defense attorney, that she would sell her own inheritance to cover the hole in the accounts before the feds kicked down the door. She had called to save his life, and he had blocked her. A fresh wave of pain ripped through her, blinding and absolute. She felt a warm, wet sensation soaking through her nightgown. She looked down. Blood. Bright, arterial red. It wasn't just labor, it was a placental abruption. She had read about it. The placenta was tearing away from the wall of the uterus. The baby was losing oxygen. She was bleeding out. She needed an ambulance. Now! Her fingers trembled as she reached for the phone on the floor. Her vision was blurring, black spots dancing in her eyes. 1. Emergency services. What is your emergency? Help, Elena whispered, her voice barely audible. Greenwich, the Sterling estate. Hemorrhage. Baby. Mom, stay with me. Is the door unlocked? Gate. Elena gasped, the room spinning. Code 4421. We are dispatching units now. Ma'am, are you alone? Yes. Elena sobbed, a tear tracking through the cold sweat on her face. My husband, he's busy. The room began to tilt. The darkness at the edges of her vision rushed inward. As Eleanor lost consciousness, her hand slumped open. The phone screen was still lit up. It showed the last outgoing call to Jayden. Beside her hand lay the scattered papers from the safe. One of them was a flight itinerary. 2 one-way tickets to Rio de Janeiro, departing tomorrow night. Jayden wasn't just stealing. He was planning to leave her and the baby behind with the wreckage of his crimes. But as the darkness took her, Elena's last thought wasn't of Jayden's betrayal. It was of the baby. "Hold on," she prayed silently to the life inside her. "Just hold on. Mummy is sorry." The sun rose over Manhattan with a blinding, unforgiving clarity. Jayden woke up in the penthouse suite of the Plaza Hotel. His head felt like it had been split open with an axe. The whiskey from L'Obsidienne had been top shelf, but he had consumed enough of it to drown a sailor. He groaned, shielding his eyes from the light streaming through the sheer curtains. He rolled over. Sasha was gone. There was a note on the pillow, written in red lipstick on hotel stationery. "Gone to a fitting. Shopping with your black card. See you at lunch. XOXOS." Jayden smirked, though it hurt his face. High maintenance, that one. But she was worth it. She made him feel young. He sat up, rubbing his temples. He needed water. He needed aspirin. And he needed to check his phone. He reached for the device on the nightstand. It was dead. He must have passed out before plugging it in. "Damn it," he muttered. He fumbled for the charger cord, plugged it in, and waited for the battery icon to turn red, then white. As the phone booted up, Jayden stretched. He had a busy day. He had to move the last $3 million to the Cayman account before the audit started on Monday. Then he would tell Eleanor he had a business trip to Brazil. He'd break the news of the divorce from there, once he and Sasha were settled in the villa. It was a cold plan, he knew. But business was business. Elena was a sinking ship, boring, heavy, anchoring him to a domestic life he despised. The phone screen lit up. It vibrated, and then it didn't stop. Buzz, 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 buzz. Notifications cascaded down the screen like a waterfall. 47 missed calls, 12 voicemails, 88 text messages. Jayden frowned. "Elena, give it a rest," he muttered, unlocking the screen. But the first missed call wasn't from Elena. It was from Greenwich Police Department. The next was from St. Jude's Medical Center, NICU. The next was from Mark Sterling, brother. The next was from the Sterling Group, legal debt. Jayden's stomach dropped. The hangover evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. He clicked on the text messages. "Mark, 3:02 a.m. Where the hell are you? Pick up your damn phone. Mark, 3:15 a.m. Police are at your house. They broke the gate. Mark, 3:45 a.m. They found her. Jayden, my God, why weren't you there? Dr. Vance, 4:10 a.m. Mr. Sterling, this is Dr. Vance. We need consent for emergency surgery. We cannot reach you. We are proceeding under emergency protocol. The situation is critical. Mark, 5:10 a.m. If you are with that whore while your wife is dying, I will kill you myself." Jayden's hands began to shake. The phone slipped from his sweaty palms and clattered onto the nightstand. Dying? He scrambled to unblock Elena's number, his fingers fumbling. He went to his voicemail. First unheard message, 10:15 p.m. from 911 dispatch. A robotic, professional voice filled the room. "Mr. Sterling, this is the Greenwich Emergency Dispatch. Your wife has been transported to St. Jude's Medical Center in critical condition following a severe hemorrhage. We found her unconscious. Please contact the hospital immediately." Jayden stood up so fast the room spun. He grabbed his trousers from the floor, hopping on one leg as he tried to pull them on. "No, no, no." He dialed the hospital. "St. Jude's. How may I direct your call?" "My wife!" Jaden shouted, his voice cracking. "Elena Sterling. Is she there? I'm her husband." There was a pause on the line, a pause that lasted too long. "One moment, Mr. Sterling. I am transferring you to the chief of surgery." Jaden paced the hotel room, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Mr. Sterling?" The voice was deep, grave. It was Dr. Vance. Yes, I'm here. I had a phone issue. Is she okay? Is the baby okay?" "Mr. Sterling," Dr. Vance's voice was like ice. "You blocked her number." Jaden froze. "What?" "We checked her phone logs when the police brought it in as evidence," Dr. Vance said, his tone filled with unprofessional, raw disgust. "She tried to call you 6 times while she was bleeding out on your floor. The last call was blocked manually." "Doctor, please. Your wife is in a coma, Mr. Sterling. She lost 4 liters of blood. Her heart stopped twice on the table." Jaden fell back onto the bed. And the baby?" "Your son was delivered via emergency C-section," Vance said. "He is in the NICU. He is alive, but barely. He suffered severe hypoxia because the ambulance was delayed. If she had reached you, if you had called 911 10 minutes earlier, things might be different." "I'm coming," Jaden choked out. "I'm coming right now." "Mr. Sterling," Vance said, and the silence that followed was heavy. "There are police officers waiting here for you, and your brother Mark is here. I suggest you hurry. Not for your wife's sake, she can't hear you, but because your world is about to end." The line went dead. Jaden stared at the phone. The block icon was gone now, but the damage was etched into the timeline of his life. He grabbed his jacket and ran for the door, leaving the diamond bracelet for Sasha on the dresser. He didn't care about the Mistress anymore. He didn't care about the money. But as he sprinted toward the elevator, his phone buzzed again. It was an email notification. From U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Subject, urgent, subpoena and asset freeze. Jaden Sterling. He stopped in the hallway. Elena had known. That's why she called. He had blocked the only person trying to save him, and now he was running straight into an inferno. The automatic doors of St. Jude's Medical Center slid open with a hiss that sounded like an accusation. Jaden Sterling burst into the lobby, his bespoke suit rumpled, his breathing ragged. He looked less like a titan of industry and more like a man fleeing a burning building. "My wife," he gasped to the nurse at the front desk. "Elena Sterling. Where is she?" Before the nurse could answer, a heavy hand clamped onto Jaden's shoulder. It wasn't a friendly grip. It was a vice. Jaden spun around to face Mark, his older brother. Mark was the CFO of Sterling Group, the quiet, dependable workhorse to Jaden's flashy show pony. But right now, Mark looked like an executioner. His eyes were rimmed with red, his jaw set in a line of pure granite. "You have the nerve to show up here?" Mark's voice was low, a dangerous rumble that made the security guard nearby take a step closer. "Mark, let me go," Jaden pleaded, trying to shrug off the hand. "I need to see her. I need to explain." "Explain what?" Mark roared, shoving Jaden backward. Jaden stumbled, colliding with a row of plastic chairs. "Explain that you were at L'Obsidienne with that leech Sasha while your wife was bleeding out on the floor. Explain why the police found your number blocked on her phone." The lobby went silent. Patients and visitors turned to stare. "I didn't know," Jaden whispered, the shame burning his face, hotter than a slap. "I didn't know it was an emergency." "You didn't care," Mark spat. "And because you didn't care, you missed the warning." Jaden froze. "The warning?" Mark reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled, blood-stained piece of paper. It was a photocopy of a bank transfer document. The police found this clutched in her hand, Jayden. In the ambulance, she was delirious. She kept trying to hand it to the paramedics, saying, "Tell Jayden. Tell him to fix it." Mark shoved the paper into Jayden's chest. "She found the Cayman transfers," Mark said, his voice breaking. "She found out you were embezzling. And instead of calling the FBI, she called you. She was trying to warn you that the SEC subpoena was dropping this morning. She was trying to give you a head start to put the money back before you went to prison." Jayden stared at the paper. The blood stain on the corner was shaped like a teardrop. The horror of it washed over him, cold and absolute. Elena hadn't called to nag. She hadn't called to complain. She had called to save his life, his reputation, and his freedom. She was willing to become an accomplice to cover his crimes, just to protect their family. And he had blocked her because Sasha told him to. "Where is she?" Jayden choked out. "ICU, 3rd floor," Mark said, stepping aside. "But don't you dare think you're going there to be a husband. You're going there to say goodbye." Jayden ran. He ignored the elevator and took the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, his lungs burning. When he reached the ICU waiting area, he was stopped by 2 uniformed officers. "Mr. Sterling?" one of them asked, stepping in his path. "Detective Miller, Greenwich PD. We need a word." "Not now," Jayden pushed past them. "My wife." "Sir," the detective said, grabbing his arm, "we have a warrant for your phone, and we have questions about the circumstances of Mrs. Sterling's injury. Negligence is a crime, Mr. Sterling. Abandonment in a medical crisis can be considered depraved indifference." "Let me see my son!" Jayden screamed, losing control. Dr. Vance appeared from a set of double doors. He looked exhausted, his surgical cap still on. "Let him through," Vance said quietly to the officers. "He needs to see the consequences." The officers stepped back. Vance led Jayden down a sterile hallway, the fluorescent lights humming like dying insects. They stopped in front of a large glass window, looking into the neonatal intensive care unit. "Incubator 4, Vance pointed. Jayden pressed his hands against the glass. Inside the plastic box, hooked up to a web of tubes and wires, was a baby. He was impossibly small. His skin was almost translucent. A ventilator tube was taped to his tiny mouth. "He weighs 3 pounds, 2 ounces, Vance said without emotion. His oxygen levels plummeted when the placenta detached. We had to revive him for 6 minutes. We don't know if there's brain damage yet. We won't know for weeks." Jayden slid down the glass wall until he hit the floor. He put his head in his hands and wept. He cried for the son he had almost killed. He cried for the wife he had betrayed. "And Eleanor?" Jayden asked through his sobs. "She's in a medically induced coma," Vance said. "Her body went into shock. She lost too much blood. Her organs are shutting down, Mr. Sterling. We are doing everything we can, but you should prepare yourself." Jayden looked up, his eyes wild. "I have money. I have millions. Hire the best specialists. Fly them in from Switzerland. I don't care what it costs." "You don't understand," a new voice cut in. Jayden turned. It was a woman in a sharp grey suit, holding a briefcase. She was flanked by 2 agents in FBI windbreakers. "You don't have millions, Mr. Sterling," she said calmly. "I'm Special Agent Reynolds. As of 10 minutes ago, all assets belonging to you and the Sterling Group have been frozen pending a federal investigation into embezzlement and securities fraud." She held up a pair of handcuffs. "Jayden Sterling, you are under arrest." The holding cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center was a far cry from the penthouse at the plaza. It smelled of stale urine, bleach, and hopelessness. Jayden sat on the metal cot, his tuxedo shirt stained with sweat and grime, He had been processed, fingerprinted, and stripped of his Italian leather shoes. He was barefoot on the cold concrete. It had been 3 days. 3 days of interrogation. 3 days of lawyers telling him he was looking at 20 years in federal prison. 3 days of not knowing if his wife and son were alive or dead. He had used his one phone call to call the hospital. Mark had answered. "Stop calling," Mark had said. "Elena is stable but still unresponsive. The baby is fighting. If you call again, I'll file a harassment suit." Jayden had sat in the silence of the cell, replaying the moment he pressed block over and over again. It was a torture loop more effective than anything the FBI could devise. "Sterling," a guard barked, rapping his baton on the bars. "Visitor. Legal counsel." Jayden stood up, hope flickering in his chest. Maybe his high-priced lawyer, Arthur Pendleton, had found a loophole. Maybe he could get bail. He was led into a small room with a plexiglass divider. But it wasn't Arthur Pendleton sitting on the other side. It was Sasha. She was wearing a trench coat and oversized sunglasses. She didn't look devastatingly beautiful today. She looked annoyed. "Sasha," Jayden breathed, sitting down. "Thank God. You have to help me. You have to get the bail money. The accounts are frozen, but I have cash in the safe at the loft. The combination is—" "Stop," Sasha said, holding up a hand. Her voice was flat, devoid of the purring warmth he was used to. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were cold. "I'm not here to bail you out, Jayden. I'm here to tell you that my lawyer has advised me to cut all contact." Jayden blinked. "What?" "Sasha, we're in this together. The Cayman account. It's in your name. You have to explain that I was just holding it there for tax purposes. If you testify—" Sasha laughed. It was the same laugh she had used at L'Obsidian when she told him to block Elena. But now it sounded demonic. "In my name?" Sasha shook her head. "Jayden, you really are an idiot. Did you read the documents I had you sign last month? The ones you thought were for the investment portfolio?" Jayden felt a chill that had nothing to do with the prison air. "What did you do?" "I transferred the Cayman holdings to a blind trust 2 days ago," Sasha smiled, checking her manicure. "Technically, that money doesn't exist anymore, and since the account was set up with your digital signature, you are the only one on the hook for the embezzlement." "You stole from me," Jayden whispered. "I gave you everything. I left my wife for you." "You left your wife because you're a narcissist who got bored," Sasha corrected him sharply. "And I stuck around because you were a convenient ATM. But ATMs run out of cash, Jayden. And this one?" She tapped the glass between them. "This one is out of order." She stood up, buttoning her coat. "Oh, and the feds offered me a deal. Full immunity in exchange for testifying about your erratic behavior. I told them all about how you forced me to hide the money. I played the victim very well. I think I even squeezed out a tear." Jayden slammed his fist against the glass. "You witch! I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" Guards rushed in, grabbing Jayden by the arms. "You destroyed my family!" Jayden screamed as they dragged him backward. "You made me block her!" Sasha didn't even flinch. She just watched him with a look of mild pity. "I didn't make you do anything, Jayden," she said softly, her voice carrying through the room. "You held the phone. You pressed the button. You chose me over her. Don't blame the mirror for your ugly reflection." She turned and walked out, her heels clicking rhythmically on the linoleum. Jayden was thrown back into his cell. He lay on the floor, curled into a ball. He had lost the money. He had lost the girl. He had lost his freedom. But the worst part, the part that was tearing him apart from the inside out, was the memory of Eleanor's face the last time he saw her. She had been smiling, holding up a tiny blue onesie. She had looked at him with so much love. So much trust. He blocked me. The words echoed in his head. Karma wasn't just watching. Karma had taken a seat, poured a drink, and was enjoying the show. 6 months passed. The trial of United States vs. Jaden Sterling was the media sensation of the year. The champagne block, as the tabloids called it, became a symbol of corporate greed and moral bankruptcy. Jaden sat in the courtroom every day, watching his life get dissected. He watched as Mark took the stand. His brother didn't look at him once. Mark testified about the missing funds, the erratic behavior, the neglect of the company. He systematically dismantled Jaden's reputation as a business genius, revealing him to be a reckless gambler who used company funds to buy luxury cars and jewelry. He watched as Sasha took the stand. She cried on cue. She painted herself as a naive girl, manipulated by a powerful, older tycoon. The jury ate it up. She walked away without a scratch, her immunity deal solid. But the day that broke him was the day the prosecution played the 911 tape. The courtroom went dead silent. Help! Greenwich! The Sterling estate! Hemorrhage! Baby! Elena's voice, weak and terrified, filled the room. My husband, he's busy. Jaden put his head on the defense table and sobbed openly. His lawyer tried to hush him, but Jaden couldn't stop. The sound of his wife dying alone while he drank whiskey was a sound that would haunt him until his grave. The verdict took 2 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Halloway, looked at Jaden over her spectacles. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice ringing with authority. Your financial crimes are severe, but your moral failings are catastrophic. You showed a complete disregard for human life, the life of your wife and your unborn child, in favor of your own hedonism. I am sentencing you to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 10. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. As the bailiff led Jaden away in chains, he looked toward the back of the courtroom. The heavy oak doors opened. A woman in a wheelchair entered, pushed by a nurse. It was Eleanor. She was pale, thinner than he remembered, and she looked fragile, like a porcelain doll that had been glued back together. But her eyes were clear. In her lap sat a baby carrier. Jaden stopped. The bailiff tugged at his arm, but Jaden planted his feet. "Elena!" he rasped. Elena looked at him. There was no anger in her eyes. There was no hate. There was something far worse. Indifference. She looked at him the way one looks at a stranger on a subway. "Let me see him," Jaden begged. "Please. Just once. Let me see Leo." Elena didn't speak. She simply placed her hand over the baby carrier, shielding the child from Jaden's view. It was a protective, definitive gesture. She turned her head to the man standing beside her. "Mark." "Let's go, Mark," she said. Her voice was soft, but steady. "We have a board meeting to get to." Jaden's eyes widened. "Board meeting?" Mark looked at his brother with a grim satisfaction. "Elena owns the company now, Jaden. The board voted unanimously to oust you and reinstate her as the majority shareholder. She's using her inheritance to pay back the stolen funds. She saved the company. She saved us." "But I'm her husband," Jaden stammered. "Ex-husband," Elena said. She held up a piece of paper. "The divorce was finalized this morning. You signed the papers in your cell, remember? You thought they were asset transfer forms. You didn't even read them." She signaled the nurse to turn the wheelchair around. "Elena!" Jaden screamed as they dragged him toward the side door. "Elena, I'm sorry. I love you. Please." Elena didn't look back. She rolled out of the courtroom into the sunlight, leaving Jaden in the shadows. As the door clicked shut, Jaden realized the truth. He hadn't just been blocked from her phone. He had been blocked from her life. The flight from JFK to Zurich was smooth, silent, and smelled of expensive leather and conditioned air. Sasha Vane sat in seat 1A of the Swiss Air First Class cabin, a flute of Bollinger champagne resting on the tray table before her. She swirled the golden liquid, watching the bubbles rise and burst. Below her, the Atlantic Ocean was a vast, dark void. But Sasha didn't feel small. She felt enormous. She felt untouchable. While Jaden was currently being processed into a federal holding facility, trading his bespoke suits for an orange jumpsuit, Sasha was wearing a cashmere trench coat that cost more than the average American family's car. She had the immunity deal in her pocket, signed by the U.S. Attorney himself. She had walked out of that courtroom with her head held high, playing the part of the manipulated victim so perfectly that even the jury had looked at her with pity. But the real victory wasn't the freedom. It was the money. $3 million. It was sitting in a blind trust in the Cayman Islands, hidden behind layers of shell companies and digital encryptions. Nebula Holdings. Jaden, in his arrogance, had signed full control over to her months ago, thinking he was hiding assets from the SEC. He hadn't bothered to read the fine print of the maintenance agreement she had slipped into the stack. He thought she was just a pretty face to hang off his arm at galas. He never realized she was the one holding the knife until it was buried in his back. "More champagne, mademoiselle?" the flight attendant asked, his voice hushed and deferential. "Leave the bottle," Sasha said, not bothering to look up from her reflection in the window. "And bring me the caviar service. I'm celebrating." "Of course." Sasha smiled at her reflection. She looked tired. The trial had been exhausting, but nothing that a week at a spa in the Swiss Alps couldn't fix. She had it all planned out. She would land in Zurich, go directly to the Banque de l'Or to liquidate the account, and then disappear. Maybe to Monaco. Maybe to Dubai. Somewhere with sun, money, and men who didn't ask too many questions. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through the final text messages Jaden had sent her before his arrest. "I love you, Sasha. We'll fix this. Why aren't you answering? Sasha, please." She deleted them one by one. Delete, delete, delete. "Goodbye, Jaden," she whispered to the empty cabin. "Thanks for the retirement fund." She slept soundly for the rest of the flight, dreaming of diamonds and blue water. She didn't know it was the last peaceful sleep she would have for the rest of her life. Zurich was cold, precise, and grayscale. The Banque de l'Or was located on the Bahnhofstrasse, a fortress of stone and iron that looked less like a bank and more like a mausoleum for money. Sasha walked in at 9:00 a.m. sharp. She had spent her last few $1,000s on a suite at the Dolder Grand Hotel and a new outfit from Chanel. Appearance was everything. If you looked like you owned the world, people usually let you take it. "I have an appointment with Monsieur Dubois," Sasha told the receptionist, sliding her sunglasses down her nose. "I am Sasha Vane." The receptionist didn't smile. She typed something into her terminal, her eyes scanning the screen. "Monsieur Dubois is expecting you. 3rd floor, the private viewing room." Sasha took the elevator up. Her heart was beating a little faster now. This was it. Once the transfer was confirmed, she was truly free. Monsieur Dubois was a small man with impeccable posture and spectacles that magnified his eyes, making him look like a skeptical owl. He stood as she entered, gesturing to a plush leather chair. "Mademoiselle Vane," he said. His accent was thick, his tone neutral. "Please, sit." "Let's make this quick, monsieur," Sasha said, placing her crocodile skin bag on the desk. "I have a reservation for lunch. I want to liquidate the Nebula Holdings account. All of it. Wire transfer to this account in the Seychelles." She slid a piece of paper across the mahogany desk. Dubois didn't pick it up. He simply looked at her. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. "Is there a problem?" Sasha asked, her voice sharpening. "Mademoiselle," Dubois began, folding his hands on the desk. "Banking in Switzerland is built on privacy. We pride ourselves on discretion. However, we are also bound by international regulatory standards, particularly when it involves criminal proceeds." Sasha laughed, a short, nervous sound. "Criminal? I have an immunity deal. I was cleared of all charges. That money is legally mine." "The immunity deal protects you from prosecution in the United States," Dubois said calmly. "It does not, however, launder the funds. You see, at 8:30 a.m. this morning, 30 minutes before you walked through those doors, we received a lis pendens." "A what?" "A court order, a seizure of assets." Dubois turned his monitor so she could see. The screen displayed the Nebula Holdings account. The balance was flashing red. Frozen. "This is a mistake," Sasha hissed, standing up. "Who did this? The FBI?" "No," Dubois said. "The order was filed by the legal counsel for the Sterling Group, specifically by the office of the new CEO, Mrs. Elena Sterling." Sasha felt the blood drain from her face. "Elena. She can't do that. She's a housewife. She doesn't know anything about offshore accounts." "On the contrary," Dubois said, picking up a document. "Her forensic accountants were quite thorough. They traced the origin of the funds in Nebula Holdings directly back to the embezzlement carried out by Mr. Jaden Sterling. Since Mr. Sterling has been convicted, these funds are classified as stolen property. Under the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, ownership reverts to the victim." Dubois looked at her over his glasses. "The victim is the Sterling Group." Sasha slammed her hand on the desk. "But the trust is in my name. I am the beneficiary." "You were the beneficiary of a trust funded by theft," Dubois corrected her, his voice dropping to a chill. "Mrs. Sterling's lawyers provided a sworn affidavit, your own testimony from the trial, Mademoiselle Vane, where you admitted to knowing the funds were illicit. You convicted yourself." He pressed a button on his phone. "The funds have already been repatriated," Dubois said finality. "The transfer was completed 10 minutes ago. The balance of your account is 0. Sasha stared at the screen. 0. "Wait," she stammered, panic clawing at her throat. "Wait, there has to be something left. The interest? The initial deposit?" 0, Dubois repeated. "In fact, the administrative fees for processing the seizure are 4,000 Swiss francs. We will need you to settle that before you leave." I don't have it," Sasha whispered. "I spent everything to get here." Dubois' face hardened. The polite banker vanished, replaced by a bouncer in a suit. "Then I suggest you leave before I call the police. Vagrancy is not tolerated in Zurich." Sasha stumbled out of the office. She walked through the marble lobby, her heels clicking loudly, sounding like gunshots in the silence. She stepped out onto the street. It had started to snow. She checked her phone. Her credit cards, linked to Jaden's secondary accounts, were declined. Her hotel room was prepaid for only one night. She had no return ticket. She stood on the corner of the Bahnhofstrasse, surrounded by billionaires and luxury watches, and realized with a terrifying clarity that she was destitute. She had played the Game of Thrones, but she had forgotten the most important rule. If you come for the Queen, you had better not miss. 5 years later, New York City. The boardroom of the Sterling Group was located on the 50th floor, offering a panoramic view of Manhattan. But Elena Sterling wasn't looking at the view. She was looking at the man at the end of the table. "I just don't think the Maternal Health Initiative is a profitable direction for the third quarter," said Mr. Henderson, a board member who had been one of Jaden's drinking buddies. Real estate is about steel and glass, Elena, not charity. Elena didn't blink. She sat at the head of the table, wearing a white power suit that made her look luminous. 5 years ago, she would have apologized. She would have shrunk back. Today, she leaned forward. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice calm, but cutting through the room like a laser. "Since I took over as CEO and pivoted our branding towards community development and sustainable housing, our stock has risen 40%. We aren't just building buildings anymore. We are building trust, something this company lost under the previous administration." She let the silence hang there. The reference to Jayden was subtle, but heavy. "Furthermore," Elena continued, sliding a folder across the table, "I have acquired the vacant lots in the Bronx that you said were worthless. We broke ground yesterday on a low-income housing complex that includes a free pediatric clinic on the ground floor. The city has given us a tax break worth $20 million. So unless you have a better plan to save us $20 million, I suggest you let me run my company." Mr. Henderson closed his mouth. He looked at the other board members. They were all nodding in agreement with Eleanor. "Meeting adjourned," Eleanor said. As the room cleared, Mark remained behind. He looked older, greyer, but he smiled as he looked at his sister-in-law. "You were brutal," Mark chuckled. "I loved it." "He needed to be reminded of who signs the checks," Eleanor sighed, rubbing her temples. "How is the gala preparation?" "Everything is set for tonight," Mark said. "The Pierre Hotel, sold out. We're expecting to raise $5 million for the NICU expansion." "Good," Eleanor said. She stood up and walked to the window. "And any news from upstate?" Mark's smile faded. "The parole hearing is in 2 weeks. He's been writing again, Elle. Letters to the board, letters to you. He claims he's a changed man. He claims he found God." "He didn't find God," Elena said, staring at the city below. "He found consequences. There's a difference." Her phone buzzed. A picture popped up on the screen. It was her nanny, sending a photo of Leo. The 5-year-old was holding up a finger painting that looked vaguely like a dinosaur. Elena's face softened instantly. The CEO vanished, and the mother appeared. "I have to go pick up Leo from school before the gala," she said, grabbing her purse. "He wants to show me his masterpiece." "He looks just like you," Mark said softly. "No," Elena said, a shadow crossing her face. "He has Jayden's eyes, and every day I have to teach him to see the world differently than his father did." The Pierre Hotel ballroom was a galaxy of crystal chandeliers and diamonds. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh orchids. Waiters in white jackets moved through the crowd like ghosts, carrying silver trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Sasha Vane adjusted the heavy tray on her shoulder. Her back was screaming in protest. She had been on her feet since 4 a.m., working a double shift for the catering company. She wasn't Sasha Vane, the influencer, anymore. She was just staff member 412. After the disaster in Zurich, she had spent a year essentially homeless in Europe before dragging herself back to the States. But without money or connections, and with her name permanently stained by the scandal, the doors of high society were welded shut. She had sold her jewelry. She had sold her clothes. Now she lived in a studio apartment in Queens that smelled of boiled cabbage and worked catering gigs where she served the very people she used to party with. She kept her head down, terrified that someone would recognize her. But honestly, she barely recognized herself. Her face was lined with stress, her hands were rough from cleaning fluids, and her once glossy hair was dull and pulled back into a severe, mandatory bun. "Champagne?" she mumbled to a group of men in tuxedos. They took the glasses without even looking at her. To them, she was furniture. Suddenly the room went quiet. The lights dimmed and a spotlight hit the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer boomed, "please welcome the chairwoman of the Sterling Foundation, Mrs. Elena Sterling." Sasha froze. She looked toward the stage. Elena walked out. She was breathtaking. She wore an emerald green gown that shimmered like liquid money. She walked with a grace and confidence that Sasha had never possessed. The crowd erupted in applause. Genuine, adoring applause. Sasha felt a physical blow to her gut. That should have been her life. If she had just waited. If she had just been smarter. Elena spoke about resilience, about the darkness of the past and the light of the future. Every word was a dagger in Sasha's heart. After the speech, the music resumed. Sasha tried to retreat to the kitchen, to hide in the back and wash dishes, anything to avoid being near her. "Excuse me, miss?" A voice stopped her. Sasha turned around, dread pooling in her stomach. It was Eleanor. She was standing just 2 feet away, holding the hand of a little boy in a miniature tuxedo. The boy, Leo, was looking at the tray of sweets Sasha was holding. "Can I have a cookie?" Leo asked, his eyes wide. Elena looked up from her son to the waitress. For a moment, time stopped. Elena's eyes widened slightly. She took in the cheap uniform, the name tag that read Sarah, the tired lines around the eyes, the trembling hands. Sasha wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to beg for forgiveness. But her throat was closed tight with shame. "Sasha," Elena said. It wasn't a question. It was a confirmation. Sasha lowered her head. I'm just working, Mrs. Sterling. I needed the shift. Please don't fire me." The plea hung in the air, pathetic and small. Elena looked at the woman who had once laughed while she bled. She remembered the phone call. She remembered the blocking. She remembered the cruelty. But as she looked at the broken creature before her, Elena realized that hate was too expensive an emotion to waste on someone so bankrupt. Elena knelt down to her son's level. "Leo," she said, her voice clear enough for Sasha to hear. "Say thank you to the lady." "Thank you," Leo chirped, grabbing a cookie. Elena stood up. She looked Sasha in the eye. There was no anger. There was no smugness, just a profound, devastating indifference. "The napkins on table 4 need refreshing," Elena said calmly. Then she turned her back. She took Leo's hand and walked away, into the light, into the crowd of friends and admirers. Sasha stood there, clutching the silver tray. She watched them go. She wasn't a villain anymore. She wasn't a rival. She was just the help. A single tear rolled down her cheek, hot and bitter. She wiped it away with her rough hand and turned toward table 4. The cell measured 6 feet by 8 feet. It contained a steel toilet, a bunk, and a small shelf. This was Jaden Sterling's empire now. He sat on the edge of the bunk, staring at the concrete floor. He was 40 years old, but he looked 60. His hair was thinning, and his skin had the grey, pasty complexion of a man who hadn't seen direct sunlight in years. "Sterling, mail call," a guard shouted, tossing a magazine through the bars. It landed on the floor with a slap. Jaden picked it up. It was Forbes. He had spent his last commissary money to subscribe to it. It was his only window into the world he used to rule. He froze. The cover was a photo of Eleanor. The rebirth of a legacy. Eleanor Sterling on motherhood, billions, and the future. She looked powerful. She looked happy. She looked like she had never shed a tear in her life. Jaden traced her face with his thumb. His hands were shaking. "She looks good, doesn't she?" Jaden jumped. His cellmate, a massive man named Tiny who was serving life for armed robbery, was leaning over from the top bunk. "That's my wife," Jaden whispered. "Ex-wife," Tiny corrected with a cruel chuckle. And from what the article says, she's worth 3 times what you were when you got pinched. Says here she just donated 5 million to a hospital. You ever donate 5 million, Jayden? Jayden didn't answer. He couldn't breathe. "Guard!" Jayden yelled, running to the bars. "Guard! I need the phone. I have minutes left." "Make it quick, Sterling," the guard grunted, unlocking the cell remotely. Jayden ran down the hallway to the wall-mounted phone. His fingers fumbled as he dialed the number. He had dialed it every week for 5 years. It usually went to voicemail. But tonight, maybe because of the gala, someone picked up. "Hello?" It was a child's voice, breathless, happy. Jayden gripped the receiver. "Leo?" "Who is this?" the boy asked. "Mummy says I can't talk to strangers." I'm not a stranger," Jayden stammered, tears streaming down his face. "Leo, it's me. It's Jayden." There was a pause. "I don't know a Jayden," Leo said innocently. "Are you the pizza man?" The words hit Jayden harder than a physical blow. "I don't know a Jayden." "Leo, listen to me," Jayden begged. "Is your mommy there? Tell her I saw the magazine. Tell her I'm proud of her. Tell her I'm sorry. Please, just tell her." "Leo." Elena's voice came through the background, distant but clear. "Who are you talking to, honey?" "Some's man," Leo said. "He's crying." There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then the sound of the phone being taken. "Hello?" Elena's voice. Cold, sharp. "Elena!" Jayden cried. "Elena, it's me. Please don't hang up. I just want to hear your voice. I just want to see him. I'll do anything. I'm dying in here, Elena." "You're not dying, Jayden," Elena said. Her voice was devoid of emotion. It was the voice of a stranger. "You're just living the life you chose. You blocked me when I needed you. Now, I'm returning the favor." "Elena, no, please. I love—" Click. The line went dead. Jayden stood there in the hallway, the dial tone buzzing in his ear like a swarm of angry hornets. He looked at the receiver. He looked at the grey walls. He looked at the bars. He slammed the phone against the wall, once, twice, 3 times until the plastic cracked. "Sterling, back in your cell," the guard shouted, reaching for his taser. Jayden slumped against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He curled his knees to his chest. He had wanted silence. He had wanted to block out the noise of his family so he could enjoy his champagne. Now he had all the silence in the world, and it was deafening. And that, my friends, is the tragic and satisfying end of Jayden Sterling. He thought he was the king of the world, sitting in a high-rise with his mistress, ignoring the pleas of the woman who loved him. He thought a simple block button could erase his responsibilities. But life has a funny way of answering the calls we try to ignore. Jayden lost his fortune to the wife he underestimated, and Sasha lost her stolen future to the greed that consumed her. They both ended up exactly where they belonged, in the cold, hard silence of their own making. If this story made your blood boil and your heart cheer for Elena's victory, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story about justice served cold. What would you have done in Eleanor's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.